The ballroom glittered with champagne and silk. Evelyn Hawthorne stood at the center, pen poised over a multi-million-dollar contract. Her white blazer was spotless, her blonde hair pinned in a perfect low bun. The waiter approached with coffee. Then he poured it directly onto her. She gasped, fury lighting her eyes. "What the hell are you doing?" He didn't apologize. He leaned in, voice low and urgent. "Come with me. Now." No explanation. No hesitation. Evelyn stared at him, confused and angry, then found herself following. She didn't know why. Her heart pounded as whispers erupted behind them. Evelyn Hawthorne was 33 years old and had built Horizon Corporation from ashes. When her mother died of cancer, she inherited nothing but debt and a failing business that was bleeding money. She was 19 then, grieving and angry at a world that had taken everything. So she made a choice that would define her entire life. She stopped feeling and started building. She learned quickly that emotion was weakness in the corporate world. Control was the only path to survival. Trust was just a lie people told themselves before they got stabbed in the back and lost everything. By 25, through ruthless determination and endless 18-hour workdays, she had turned Horizon into a legitimate powerhouse that commanded respect and fear. By 30, she was the youngest female CEO in Manhattan's financial district, a title she'd fought tooth and nail to earn. People called her brilliant, calculating, ruthless, utterly untouchable. She wore those labels like expensive armor, each one a shield against vulnerability. Her corner office overlooked Central Park with floor-to-ceiling windows. Her penthouse had panoramic city views. Her closet held more designer suits than most people owned clothes. But at night, when she came home to silence and empty rooms, she felt nothing. She told herself that numbness was strength. That independence meant never needing anyone. That loneliness was simply the price successful women paid. But there was a part of her past buried so deep she barely remembered it anymore. 10 years ago, before the boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, she had been someone completely different. Softer, more open. She had volunteered for an international relief organization, spending 6 brutal months in a war-torn region overseas. She was 23 then, idealistic and desperate to help people who had nothing. The days blurred together in dust and screams and blood she could never wash off completely. One day, a military helicopter dropped wounded soldiers near the medical tent where she worked. She ran to help. One man was barely conscious, blood pouring from his side. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. His hand gripped her wrist with desperate strength. "Don't let me sleep," he whispered, eyes struggling to focus. "Please, don't let me sleep." She didn't know what else to do, so she talked. She told him about New York and its buildings, about her mother's business, about the city she missed. She held his hand and kept him awake through sheer will until the medics arrived. His grip left bruises that lasted weeks. But she never pulled away. Then the helicopter lifted off, and she never saw him again. She didn't know his name, didn't know if he survived. When she came home months later, she buried that memory with all the others. There were too many painful things to carry, so she let them go and built walls instead. Luke Miller remembered everything. He was 36 now, working night shifts as a waiter in a 5-star hotel. He wore a white shirt and black tie and kept his head down. Nobody looked at waiters. That was exactly the point. Once, he had been someone else entirely. A Navy SEAL, a husband, a man who believed he could protect the people he loved. He served 4 tours overseas, earned 2 Purple Hearts, and came home with scars nobody could see but that never stopped hurting. His wife tried to understand, tried to wait. But fear won in the end. She left on a Tuesday morning, taking nothing but her suitcase and her silence. She didn't want to be a military wife anymore. Didn't want the constant fear, the endless waiting, the empty bed. She left him with Lily, their 6-year-old daughter with bright eyes and a smile that could break his heart in the best and worst ways. Luke didn't fight for custody or argue. He just took her and built a completely different life. A quieter one, A safer one. He got the waiter job because it paid cash and didn't ask questions about his past. He worked nights so he could be home when Lily woke up every morning. He read her stories, made her breakfast, walked her to school holding her small hand. She was his entire world. Everything else was just survival. 3 weeks ago, he saw Evelyn's photo in the hotel event roster. The name meant nothing to him, but the face stopped him cold. It was her. The woman who had saved his life 10 years ago in that hellscape. The woman whose voice kept pulling him back from the edge when all he wanted was to sleep and never wake up again. He remembered everything about that day. The pain, the blood, the way her voice kept him tethered to life when dying seemed easier. He remembered her hands, shaking but steady as she worked. Her eyes, terrified but determined not to give up on him. She talked to him about New York like it was a place worth staying alive for. And somehow, impossibly, he believed her. He never got to thank her. Never even knew her name. And now, 10 years later, she was here. A CEO in a white blazer, surrounded by people who smiled with knives behind their backs. She looked different now. Harder, like she'd built armor and forgotten how to take it off. Luke didn't plan to approach her or reveal himself. What would he even say? "Thank you for saving me. Now let me serve you coffee?" It felt wrong. But then he noticed things. Small things. Wrong things. A man lingering too long near the stage, checking his phone repeatedly with nervous energy. A small device taped under her chair, barely visible but unmistakable to someone trained to spot threats. Mark Evans, Horizon's COO, watching Evelyn with an expression that wasn't quite right, calculating and cold. Luke had seen bombs before in his years of combat. He knew what they looked like, how they were placed, what they were designed to do. This one was small, not meant to kill outright, meant to injure, to maim, to send a brutal message. He checked his watch. If his assessment was correct, it would detonate in less than 10 minutes. He had two choices: walk away and let fate decide what happened, or do something that would expose him, cost him his job, maybe even get him arrested. He looked at Evelyn, pen hovering over the contract, completely unaware of the danger beneath her. He chose her. He would always choose her. Luke grabbed Evelyn's wrist and pulled her toward the emergency exit with urgent force. She resisted immediately, heels scraping against marble, fury radiating from every inch of her body. "Let go of me right now, or I swear I'll..." The explosion cut her off mid-threat. It wasn't loud, just a sharp crack like glass breaking. But screams erupted behind them immediately. Smoke began pouring from the stage area, right where her chair had been moments before. Evelyn froze, her breath catching in her throat. Luke didn't stop moving. He dragged her through the heavy door, down a concrete stairwell that smelled like paint and cleaning supplies, into a dimly lit service corridor. What the hell just happened? Her voice shook despite her attempt to sound strong. "Someone tried to hurt you badly. Who would do that?" "I don't know yet." He released her wrist and stepped back, his eyes constantly scanning the hallway. "But I know how. Small explosive device. Time to go off the moment you signed that contract." Evelyn stared at him, her sharp mind racing through possibilities. The contract. The board meeting scheduled for next week. The whispers about internal disputes and power struggles. She had dismissed them all as petty corporate drama. Now they felt like warnings she should have listened to more carefully. "Why should I believe anything you're saying?" Luke pulled a small metal fragment from his pocket. It was scorched black, bent and twisted, barely larger than a coin. "I found this under your chair an hour ago when I was setting tables. I recognized it immediately. You had about 8 minutes left." She looked at the fragment, then at him. Her fury was fading fast, replaced by something much colder. Fear. Not of him. Of what this meant. Someone inside her own company wanted her dead or seriously injured. "Who are you really?" "The waiter." Waiters don't know what bombs look like. Luke said nothing. His silence was answer enough. Evelyn studied him carefully now. broad shoulders, rough hands that had seen hard physical work, eyes that had witnessed violence, and learned to live with it. The way he moved, economical and precise, constantly aware of his surroundings. This wasn't a man who poured coffee for a living. This was someone hiding in plain sight. "Why did you help me?" Luke hesitated. For just a moment, something vulnerable flickered in his expression. "Because someone helped me once. A long time ago. I don't forget debts like that." She didn't understand what he meant. But she knew one thing, with certainty. He wasn't lying. Evelyn pulled out her phone, then stopped. If someone inside Horizon wanted her dead, calling security could be a catastrophic mistake. She needed time to think, needed answers before making any moves. She looked at Luke, really looked at him. "You have somewhere safe we can go?" He nodded slowly. "My apartment. It's not far. But it's not what you're used to. I don't care what it looks like right now." They left through the back entrance, slipping into the New York night. The city hummed around them, oblivious. Neither spoke during the walk. They both knew the silence wouldn't last long. Evelyn followed Luke through unfamiliar streets to a small apartment building in Brooklyn, peeling paint on the facade, narrow stairs that creaked, a door with 3 different locks. Inside, the apartment was sparse but clean. A worn couch, a small table with mismatched chairs, children's drawings taped to every wall, bright splashes of crayon color. "You have a kid?" Evelyn asked, genuinely surprised. "A daughter. Lily. She's 6 years old." As if summoned by her name, a small voice called from the hallway. "Daddy?" A little girl appeared, rubbing her eyes sleepily. She had blonde curls and wore pajamas covered in stars and moons. When she saw Evelyn standing in their living room, she stopped, suddenly shy. "Who's that?" "A friend," Luke said gently, his entire demeanor softening. "She's going to stay with us for a little while." "Everything's okay. Go back to bed, sweetheart." Lily looked at Evelyn with wide, curious eyes that held no judgment. Then she nodded and disappeared back into her room. Evelyn felt something crack inside her chest. Something she hadn't felt in years. "She's beautiful," she said quietly, meaning every word. "She's everything to me." Luke's voice was completely unguarded now. "I work nights so I can be with her during the day. She doesn't know what I used to do, who I used to be. She just knows I'm here. That I'll always be here for her." Evelyn looked around the apartment again, seeing it differently now. The drawings weren't just decoration. They were love made visible. The worn furniture wasn't poverty. It was priorities. This man had chosen his daughter over everything else. Over career, over pride, over the life he'd once known. It was so far from her world of power lunches and corporate takeovers. "Why are you really helping me?" she asked again. Softer this time. Luke met her eyes directly. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything that matters. And I won't let that happen to someone else if I have the skills to stop it." Evelyn wanted to argue, to push him away, to maintain the walls she'd spent years building. But exhaustion was setting in. "I need to find out who did this," she said. "And I can't trust anyone at Horizon right now." "Then we start looking tomorrow," Luke said simply. "Tonight you rest. You're safe here. I promise." She nodded, too tired to fight anymore. For the first time in 10 years, Evelyn Hawthorne let someone else take control, and it felt like relief. The next morning, Evelyn woke on Luke's couch, covered with a soft blanket she didn't remember pulling over herself. Sunlight streamed through the window. She could hear quiet sounds from the kitchen. Lily sat at the small table, drawing with intense concentration. When she saw Evelyn sit up, she smiled brightly. "Daddy made pancakes. Do you want some?" Luke appeared from the kitchen, holding a plate. "You should eat something." She took it. The pancakes were plain, nothing fancy, but they were warm and smelled like home. Lily watched her with open curiosity. "Are you Daddy's girlfriend?" "Lily," Luke warned gently. Evelyn smiled despite everything. "No, sweetheart. I'm just someone your dad is helping." Lily nodded. thoughtfully. "Daddy helps a lot of people. He's really good at it." After breakfast, Lily went to her room to play. Luke and Evelyn sat at the table. "I need access to Horizon's financial records," Evelyn said. "If someone's trying to kill me, there's a reason. Money, power, control. I need to know what I'm missing." "You can't go back there," Luke said firmly. "Not yet. They'll be watching for you." "Then what do you suggest?" "I go in tonight after hours. I can get into places you can't without triggering alarms." Evelyn frowned. "You're talking about breaking in. I'm talking about finding the truth before someone else tries to kill you." She should have said no. Should have called the police, hired private security. But legal hadn't kept her safe. And something about Luke made her believe he could do what others couldn't. "Fine," she said. "But I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not. It's my company. My life. I know the building, the systems, where files are kept. You need me." Luke sighed. He could see the steel in her eyes. "Then you do exactly what I say. No arguments. If I tell you to run, you run." Agreed. They spent the day planning carefully. Luke sketched the building layout from memory, marking cameras and guard rotations. That night, they left Lily with a neighbor Luke trusted. Then they headed to Horizon Tower. Evelyn used her keycard for the parking garage. Luke led them through maintenance corridors she'd never known existed. He moved in complete silence. They reached her office without incident. Evelyn logged in and pulled up financial records. "What are we looking for?" Luke asked from the door. "Anomalies. Transfers that don't match." Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Then she stopped cold. "There." Luke moved to her side. On screen were dozens of wire transfers to the same offshore account, hidden in legitimate expenses. "Who authorized these?" Evelyn clicked through records. Her blood ran cold. Mark Evans. Her COO. The man she'd trusted for 3 years. How much? $5 million. Maybe more. Over 18 months. That's motive. If Mark was stealing, he needed her gone before she discovered it. "We need real proof," she said. They spent an hour copying documents. Then, as they left through empty corridors, Luke suddenly stopped. Footsteps. Coming closer. Luke pulled Evelyn into a dark alcove. They pressed against the wall, barely breathing. A security guard walked past. He didn't see them. When it was safe, they made it out. Back at the apartment, Evelyn collapsed on the couch. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do." Luke met her eyes. Something passed between them. "I told you. I don't forget debts." Over the next few days, they worked together. Evelyn reviewed evidence while Luke watched for threats. Lily brought them snacks and drew pictures, oblivious to danger. One evening, Evelyn helped Lily with a drawing of 3 people holding hands. "Who are they?" Evelyn asked. "That's me. That's Daddy. And that's you." Evelyn's throat tightened. "Why did you draw me?" Lily looked up with innocent honesty. "Because Daddy smiles when you're here. He doesn't smile a lot, usually." Evelyn glanced across the room. Luke was reviewing documents. He looked up, caught her gaze, and something softened in his expression. She realized she didn't want to leave. This small apartment felt more like home than anything she'd built. That night, after Lily was asleep, they sat together on the couch. "Can I ask you something?" Evelyn said. "Sure. Why did you really leave the military?" Luke was quiet for a moment. "My wife left me. Said she couldn't live with the fear anymore. I had to choose between the job and my daughter." He shrugged. "It wasn't really a choice. Do you regret it?" "No." His voice was absolutely firm. "Lily's the best thing I've ever done. Everything else is just noise." Evelyn felt something shift inside her. She had spent so long chasing success, proving she didn't need anyone. But sitting here with this man who chose love over glory She wondered if she'd been chasing the wrong thing. "You said you owed someone a debt," she said carefully. "What did you mean?" Luke looked at her. For the first time, she saw vulnerability in his eyes. 10 years ago, I was bleeding out in the middle of nowhere. A woman sat with me and kept me awake until help came. I never knew her name, but I never forgot her voice. Evelyn's heart stopped. "What?" "She told me about New York, about her mother, about the business she was going to save." Luke's voice was soft. "She held my hand even though hers was shaking. And she refused to let me die." Evelyn couldn't breathe. Memories flooded back. The dust, the blood, the soldier with desperate eyes gripping her wrist. "That was you," she whispered. "That was me." Tears stung her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you didn't need to know. I just needed to keep you safe. The way you kept me safe." Evelyn reached for his hand. He laced his fingers through hers, and the connection felt inevitable. "I thought I forgot you," she said. "But I didn't. I just buried it with everything else that hurt. I know. It's easier that way." "Is it?" Luke looked at their joined hands. "No, it's not." They sat in silence, holding on to each other. Outside, the city buzzed. But in here, it was just them. Two people who had saved each other, and were only now realizing what that meant. Evelyn rested her head on Luke's shoulder. "What happens now? Now we finish this. We take down Mark. We keep you safe. And after that?" Luke turned to look at her. "After that, I don't know, but I'd like to find out. With you." Evelyn smiled, something genuine breaking through years of armor. "Me too." The next morning, Evelyn's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She opened it. Her blood turned to ice. "I know what you're planning. Stop now, or Lily pays the price." Her hands shook as she showed Luke. His face went deathly pale, then hardened into something dangerous. "Mark," he said quietly, his voice deadly calm. "How does he know about Lily? He must have been watching me, following me. I should have been more careful." Luke's jaw clenched. "He's using my daughter to get to you because he knows I'll break. Then we give him what he wants." "What?" "I'll meet him. Alone. I'll hand over the evidence. Tell him I'll stay quiet." "Absolutely not. I won't let you walk into a trap. He won't hurt me if he thinks I'm cooperating. And while I distract him, you get Lily somewhere safe. We call the police, set up backup." Luke shook his head violently. "I won't use you as bait. You don't have a choice. He's using your daughter because he knows you'll do anything to protect her, but he doesn't know me. He thinks I'm just a CEO who'll fold under pressure. Let him think that." Luke wanted to argue, wanted to find another way, but he could see the determination in her eyes. She wasn't the fragile CEO Mark thought she was. She was the woman who had saved his life in a war zone. "Fine," he said finally. "But we do it my way. I call in backup. People I trust from my old unit. We set up surveillance, exit strategies, everything." They spent the day preparing meticulously. Luke contacted a former SEAL teammate who owed him a favor. Together, they planned every detail, every contingency. Evelyn would meet Mark at a warehouse on the waterfront. Luke and his friend would position themselves nearby, ready to move instantly. That night, Evelyn drove to the warehouse alone, her heart pounding, but her hand steady on the wheel. The building loomed in the darkness, abandoned and isolated. The kind of place where terrible things happened. Mark was already there, standing under a single flickering light. He smiled when he saw her approach. "Evelyn, so glad you could make it. I was worried you'd do something stupid." "Where's Lily?" she demanded, keeping her voice strong. "Safe. For now." He held out a hand expectantly. "The evidence. Give it to me, and we can all walk away from this mess." Evelyn pulled a flash drive from her pocket, holding it up. "It's all here. Financial records, transfers, everything." Mark took it, turning it over in his fingers like a prize. "You know, I really thought you'd be harder to break." Guess everyone has a weakness eventually. I guess so. You should have just signed the contract and stayed out of my way. This didn't have to get messy at all. Evelyn stepped closer, her eyes hard. You're right. It didn't have to be this way. What? That's when Luke appeared from the shadows, moving with lethal silence and precision. He grabbed Mark from behind, twisting his arm until the flash drive fell and clattered on concrete. Mark struggled desperately, but Luke was trained for exactly this. In seconds, Mark was on the ground, pinned completely. Where's my daughter? Luke's voice was cold, deadly, barely controlled rage. I don't know what you're talking about. Luke twisted harder. Mark screamed, the sound echoing off empty walls. Try again. And think very carefully before you lie to me. Okay. Okay. She's at the old cannery building. East side. I swear she's fine. I just needed leverage. I wasn't going to hurt her. Luke knocked him unconscious with a single brutal blow. Then he looked at Evelyn, his eyes wild with fear. Go. Call the police. Tell them everything. I have to get to Lily now. Evelyn nodded, already pulling out her phone. But as she did, Mark's phone buzzed on the ground. She picked it up. Her blood turned to ice as she read the message. Device activated. T-5 minutes. Her hands shook. Luke, he saw the message. His face went white. He put a bomb at the cannery. With Lily. They ran. Luke drove like the city was on fire, weaving through traffic with terrifying skill. Evelyn called the police, giving them the address, the situation, everything she knew, but she knew they wouldn't make it in time. Nobody would. Except them. They reached the cannery with 3 minutes left on the clock. The building was dark, abandoned for years, windows broken and walls crumbling. Luke kicked in the door and ran inside, Evelyn right behind him. Lily! He shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. A small, terrified voice answered from somewhere deep inside. Daddy? They found her in a back room, tied to a chair with rough rope, her face streaked with tears. A small device sat on a crate nearby, counting down with cold precision, 2 minutes 40 seconds. Luke cut the ropes with a knife from his belt, his hand surprisingly steady despite the terror in his eyes. He scooped Lily up, holding her tight against his chest. Close your eyes, baby. Don't look. Just hold on to Daddy. They ran. Evelyn led the way, finding the fastest route back through the maze of corridors. Behind them, the timer counted down relentlessly. 1 minute, 45 seconds. They burst through the door and kept running, putting distance between themselves and the building. Luke shielded Lily with his entire body. Evelyn ran beside them. The explosion tore through the cannery with devastating force, shattering what remained of the windows, sending debris flying into the night sky. The shockwave knocked them to the ground hard. Luke covered Lily completely. Evelyn hit the pavement, covering her head as pieces of metal and concrete rained down around them. When the noise finally stopped, they were all still breathing. Still alive. Still together. Lily was crying, clinging to Luke with desperate strength. He held her, whispering reassurances, checking her carefully for injuries. She was scared but physically unhurt. Evelyn pushed herself up, her ears ringing, her body aching. It's okay, Evelyn said softly, kneeling beside them. Her hand rested gently on Lily's back. You're safe now. You're both safe. Lily looked at her with tear-filled eyes. You saved me. Evelyn shook her head, her own tears falling. Your dad did. He saved both of us. No, Lily said, with a child's simple wisdom. You both did. You're a family now. Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Ambulances followed. Mark would be arrested at the warehouse. The evidence was secure. It was finally over. But through it all, the three of them stayed together, holding on to each other desperately. A makeshift family forged in crisis, bound by something stronger than blood. At the hospital, Luke was treated for minor cuts and bruises from the explosion. Lily clung to him, refusing to let go even when the nurses tried to examine her gently. She was physically fine, just terrified. Evelyn sat beside them, exhausted but profoundly relieved. A detective approached after some time. "Miss Hawthorne, we'll need your full statement about everything that happened, and we need the evidence you mentioned." "You'll have everything you need," she promised, her voice steady despite exhaustion. "But not tonight. Tomorrow. Tonight, I need to be here with them." The detective looked at the three of them, understanding passing across his weathered face. He nodded and left them alone. Luke looked at Evelyn across Lily's curls. "Thank you. For everything. For running toward danger instead of away from it." "You saved me first," she said quietly, holding his gaze. "I just returned the favor." They sat in silence, watching Lily finally fall asleep in Luke's arms, feeling safe enough to rest at last. When a nurse came to check vitals, Evelyn stepped outside into the hospital corridor to get air and clear her head. Luke found her on a small balcony, overlooking the parking lot, staring at the city lights without really seeing them. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gentle with concern. "I don't know." She turned to him, vulnerability written across her face. "Luke, my life is dangerous. People want me dead. If you stay close to me, if Lily stays close to me, I'm not going anywhere. You don't understand what you're saying. I understand perfectly." Luke stepped closer, his eyes intense and unwavering. "You think you're protecting me by pushing me away, but I've been in war zones. I've faced death more times than I can count. And the only time I was ever truly afraid was tonight, thinking I'd lose my daughter. But you were there. You ran toward danger, not away from it. That's who you are, Evelyn." Evelyn felt tears on her cheeks. "I don't know how to do this. The relationship thing. The family thing. I've been broken for so long, Luke. So am I. We'll figure it out together. One day at a time." She wanted to argue, to list all the reasons this couldn't possibly work. But when she looked at him, all she saw was the man who had saved her life twice. The man who chose love over everything else. The man she was falling in love with. "What if I fail?" she whispered, her deepest fear finally spoken aloud. "Then we fail together, and we get up and try again." Evelyn laughed through her tears, the sound broken but genuine and real. Then she kissed him. It was soft, tentative, full of everything they couldn't say out loud. When they pulled apart, Luke smiled, really smiled for the first time. "Lily's going to demand a wedding, you know. She's already very invested in this outcome." "Is she now?" "She's been drawing pictures for days. You, me, and her, in wedding clothes. She's very specific and detailed about it." Evelyn smiled, something warm blooming in her chest. "Then I guess we better not disappoint her." They stood together on that hospital balcony, watching the city wake up to a new day. For the first time in her entire adult life, Evelyn wasn't afraid of what came next, because she wasn't facing it alone anymore. 2 days later, Evelyn called an emergency shareholders meeting. The boardroom filled quickly with executives, lawyers, journalists, and board members. Mark Evans was notably absent, currently in police custody awaiting arraignment on multiple charges. Evelyn stood at the head of the long conference table, Luke beside her. She had insisted he be there. He was part of this now, part of everything moving forward. "I'm here to address recent events and present evidence of serious internal corruption," she began, her voice clear and strong. She played the recordings of Mark's confession at the warehouse, showed the financial documents proving systematic embezzlement, explained the assassination attempt, the bomb, the kidnapping of a 6-year-old girl to use as leverage. The room erupted in shocked whispers and gasps. When she finished, the chairman of the board stood slowly, his face grave. "Miss Hawthorne, this is absolutely unprecedented. What exactly are you proposing we do?" "I'm proposing complete transparency moving forward. Mark Evans stole millions from this company and tried to kill me to cover it up. I want him prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I also want a comprehensive audit of all departments, top to bottom, no exceptions." "And your role going forward?" Evelyn took a deep breath. This was the moment that would change everything. I'm stepping down as full-time CEO. The room exploded in noise. Voices overlapped, demanding explanations and clarifications. She raised a hand, waiting for silence. I'm not abandoning Horizon. I'm restructuring my priorities. I'll remain on the board and maintain strategic oversight. But day-to-day operations will go to someone the board appoints. Someone trustworthy. She paused, letting that sink in completely. I'm also establishing the Horizon Second Chance Fund. It will provide resources, job training, and real opportunities for people rebuilding their lives after hardship. Veterans, single parents, anyone who needs a genuine fresh start and is willing to work for it. She looked at Luke, her eyes warm with emotion. And I'm appointing Luke Miller as the fund's director. More gasps rippled through the room like waves. Luke looked genuinely stunned. Miss Hawthorne. Someone protested loudly from the back. With all due respect, he's a waiter. He has no corporate experience whatsoever. He's a decorated Navy SEAL with extensive leadership experience who saved my life and brought down a criminal conspiracy inside our own organization. He understands rebuilding from absolutely nothing. He's exactly who we need for this mission. The board argued and debated intensely for over an hour, but in the end, they couldn't deny the overwhelming evidence or her unwavering determination. The vote passed. As the meeting ended, reporters swarmed with dozens of questions. Evelyn answered them with calm precision, hiding nothing from the truth. She didn't spin the story or make excuses. She owned the truth completely and without apology. When the room finally cleared, Luke pulled her aside into a quiet corner. "Are you absolutely sure about this decision?" he asked, searching her face. "I've never been more sure of anything in my entire life. You're giving up everything you built. Years and years of work." "No." Evelyn smiled, taking his hand firmly. "I'm choosing what actually matters. There's a fundamental difference. I built an empire, but I was completely empty inside. Now, I'm building something real and meaningful." Luke kissed her forehead gently. "Lily's going to lose her mind when she finds out about the fund. She'll want to help with everything." "Good. She can help me design the logo and pick the office colors and name the programs." They walked out of Horizon Tower together, hand in hand. For the first time in a decade, Evelyn didn't look back at the building that had defined her. She looked forward, toward whatever came next. A month later, on a rooftop overlooking Manhattan, a small ceremony took place. No press, no crowd, no corporate spectacle, just close friends, a handful of Luke's former military teammates and Lily. The rooftop was the same one where the fateful party had been held weeks ago, but now it looked completely different, transformed with simple white flowers and warm string lights. A new beginning built on the ashes of the old life. Evelyn wore a simple white dress, elegant and understated. Luke wore a dark suit that fit him perfectly. Lily was the flower girl, her blonde curls bouncing as she scattered rose petals with serious concentration and pride. The officiant was brief and meaningful. The vows were deeply personal, written by them in quiet moments together. When Luke slipped the ring on Evelyn's finger, his hand was steady and sure. "I promise to keep you awake," he said softly, referencing the memory only they shared. Evelyn smiled through happy tears. "I promise to stay. No matter what comes, I'm done running from life." They kissed as the sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in brilliant gold and crimson and purple. The city stretched out below them, indifferent and eternal and beautiful. Lily ran up immediately, throwing her small arms around both of them with fierce joy. "We're a real family now." Evelyn lifted her up, holding her close. "We were always a real family, sweetheart. This just makes it official and legal." Luke wrapped his arms around both of them, completing the circle perfectly. For a man who had lost everything once, he now had everything that truly mattered. As their small gathering celebrated with champagne and laughter, Evelyn found herself looking out at the city she'd conquered and then chosen to leave behind. She had spent years building an empire, chasing power relentlessly, proving she didn't need anyone. Now, she stood here with a former soldier turned waiter and his 6-year-old daughter, and she had never felt richer or more complete in her entire life. "What are you thinking about?" Luke asked, joining her at the edge of the rooftop. "That I'm glad you spilled that coffee on me." He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Worst first impression in history. Best decision I never made." Luke pulled her close against him. "You know Lily wants a little brother or sister, right? She's already planning it out." Evelyn raised an eyebrow, amused. "Already? We just got married an hour ago. She's very goal-oriented and ambitious. I wonder where she gets that particular trait." Evelyn laughed, leaning into him completely. "Let's survive being married first. Then we can discuss expanding the family. Fair deal." They stood together as the city lights began flickering on below, one by one, like earthbound stars. Somewhere down there, Horizon Tower still stood tall, still thriving under new leadership. But Evelyn's empire wasn't in boardrooms anymore. It was here, in this moment, with these people who chose her, and whom she chose back. Lily ran over, tugging insistently on Evelyn's dress. "Can we go home now? I want to show you my new drawing." "Of course, sweetheart." Evelyn took her small hand. "What did you draw this time?" "Our family, but bigger this time. With a dog, and maybe a baby, and a big house with a yard." Luke and Evelyn exchanged amused glances over her head. "We'll see about the baby," Evelyn said diplomatically, "but the dog is definitely negotiable." Lily cheered, already planning their entire future with the confidence and optimism of childhood. As they left the rooftop together, the three of them hand in hand, Evelyn realized something profound and life-changing. For years, she had defined success as power, money, control, and respect from people who didn't really know her. She had measured her worth in quarterly reports and stock prices and magazine covers. But standing here, holding hands with a little girl who called her mom and a man who saw past every wall she'd ever built, she understood the real truth that had eluded her for so long. Success wasn't what you built alone. It was who you built it with, who you chose to let in, who chose you back, despite everything. The city stretched out below them, full of noise and chaos and endless possibility and dreams. But up here, in this small circle of love and commitment, everything was exactly as it should be. Evelyn Hawthorne had spent her entire adult life running from loss, from pain, from genuine connection with other human beings. Now, finally, she had stopped running. She had found something worth staying for, something worth fighting for, something real and true. And it all started with a deliberately spilled cup of coffee and a stranger who remembered her when she'd completely forgotten herself. Sometimes the best things in life come from the moments that completely ruin your carefully laid plans. Sometimes salvation wears a waiter's uniform and serves you the truth instead of coffee. And sometimes the family you choose is infinitely stronger and more real than any empire you could ever build alone in isolation. Evelyn had learned all of that the hard way, through danger and fear and near death. But as she walked into her future with Luke and Lily beside her, she wouldn't change a single moment of the journey, because this wasn't the ending she had planned or expected or thought she wanted. It was the beginning she deserved all along. The life she'd been running from her entire adult life. And now, finally, she was ready to live it fully.